In this episode we throw this into this to hopefully turn this into this. Hello and welcome. In the previous episode we revealed the new engine and transferred all the necessary parts. Right now we have the engine wrecking balling from the skid steer and we have no time to lose as we are running out of daylight. First we push the Golf inside and then we can let the skid steer do its magic. As expected, the hardest part is lining up the motor mounts to their mounting points, especially since we have to drop it in at an angle. After an immense struggle, the block was married to the chassis. Now it's a matter of connecting all the cables, hoses and electrical connections. Luckily, a lot of my mates came by and we worked into the night to at least hear the thing run for the first time. After several hours of cursing and knuckle crunching, it was time to try our luck for the first time and cross our fingers that the thing doesn't launch a rod into my neighbor's garden.
Ja. Staat in een vitesse? Wordt wel echt heel hard.
Exhausted and clueless, we threw in the towel and closed up shop for the night, hoping that a new day will bring some inspiration. So for right now, I think everything is connected. To get this thing running, we're going to have to check if the three components of combustion are present, being spark, compression and fuel. First we'll go over how everything works, starting with the ignition system. So this is the coil which generates a spark. The spark flows through here to the distributor and the distributor distributes the spark to each respective cylinder through the spark plug cables. When connecting these cables, it's important not to mess up the firing order, which is 1, 3, 4, 2, and that's the same as the firing order of the engine, which is 1, 3, 4, 2. The fuel comes from the tank through this fuel filter, then it goes all the way through this line to the fuel pump, which is a mechanical fuel pump in this case, which means that the pump is powered directly by the engine. Then the fuel goes through this line to this container, where one part is sent to the carb and one part is sent back to the fuel tank to be returned. In the carb, the fuel will be mixed with air and that air fuel mixture will travel through here inside the engine. So to generate compression, the car has to be turned over with some kind of device, and that's the starter. The starter is located here, and when it is powered by the battery, it will turn over the engine and generate the compression we need to combust the air-fuel mixture. So those are the three things we're going to check right now, starting off with spark. We're gonna check if the ignition system is generating spark by putting a spark plug in one of these cables and holding it against an engine ground to see if there's a spark coming out. So we know there's ignition, so that means that we don't have to worry about that anymore and we can move on to fuel. I checked this already and I noticed that there is some fuel coming from the tank to the filter, so that's already a good sign. I think I'm going to unhook one of the lines from the fuel pump and see if it's pumping fuel out. Okay, so fingers crossed, I think she's ready to be started.
Holy shit.
So it kind of wanted to run, so I'm going to connect everything, put some coolant in it, connect the exhaust manifold so I don't get hearing damage. So yeah, that's what we're going to do right now.
First I need to mount these darn exhaust clamps which we took off in the first episode. Taking these off is a huge pain, but mounting these is something else. But after a long fight I eventually got both of them in place. Then it's time to fill up the coolant system and try to get it running again. Some weird noises were coming from the carburetor, so I decided to take it off and take a look at it. When taking it off, I noticed that it was kind of loose, and that might be why it was squeaking. Nevertheless, I took it apart and gave it a clean inside to be extra safe.
So I was still trying to get the car started and was still not going well, and at a sudden moment I hear this. And I look under the car and I find this. This is one of the bolts from the starter, so that means that the starter wasn't even connected. So yeah, that might be the reason why the starter is acting up so bad, because it's only attached by one bolt. Well, there's a problem. Fucking hell, it works. I'm afraid we have come to a point where I've got some bad news. I was connecting the clutch cable to the clutch engagement arm, or whatever you want to call it, and I noticed this.
The clutch engagement arm is connected to the clutch pedal and it is used to disengage the clutch. Normally the arm shouldn't be able to be moved by hand past the 9 o'clock position, and it should have a lot of resistance on it. Mine can be moved freely, so something broke inside. As you can see on my old gearbox, the arm shouldn't be able to move higher than this point, and this means that I have to swap the gearboxes. Great.
So yesterday night was quite a bummer. I was really demotivated because I really thought I could finish the car yesterday. But I've refound my motivation. The transmission just has to be switched. So that's what we're going to do today. We're just going to do it so we get it over with.
But before swapping the transmission, there is some other stuff that need to be done, so I decided to start the day there. First up, I got the engine running and filled it up with coolant so the system could bleed all the air out. While this was going, I took my timing light and set the ignition timing to its desired setting. This is done by turning the distributor in a counterclockwise manner to advance timing and in a clockwise manner to retard timing. Then I drained all the oil and changed the oil pan gasket. After fitting a new oil filter and filling her up with fresh oil, it was time to get to the big task of today, swapping the gearboxes. First, the starter had to be removed and it immediately imposed a problem. The previous owner tortured this bolt, so I had to be careful not to break it. I put a hose clamp over it to make sure it wouldn't split open.
So the starter motor is disconnected right now. The next thing we have to do is unhook the shifting mechanism, unhook 2 engine mounts so we can drop everything a little bit, so that way it will slide out easier. And then it's just a matter of unhooking the bolts holding the gearbox to the engine and then just pull her out. So the bottom one is loose. Now we are going to unbolt this one, and then the whole thing should drop just enough for me to slide this thing out. So this one is loosened, and then I dropped everything on jack stands. Now I'm going to start with fiddling the gearbox out, and then if it doesn't clear this part, then we're going to drop it a little more. So over here I've got the 2 gearboxes, and I'm going to try to explain what the issue is. That's the new one, that is the old one. And as you can see, the clutch is engaged by this pin coming out when the clutch arm is engaged. If I go to the 90 position, it moves all the way through here. So that's quite a difference.
I will explain the problem more in depth in another video, but for now it's time to manhandle the transmission into place.
So that was one of the tougher battles I've had in a long time. It would have been a lot smarter having a friend around. And also my jack broke along the way, so it kept falling down. It was an absolute nightmare. But we got her in, and now all we have to do is hook up the axles and hook up the exhaust. And then she should be ready for her first drive. So I'm really excited for that. So, she's on the ground and she's ready to be driven for the first time on her own power with the new engine. I'm really excited, but I'm exhausted at the same time. This was really an amazing experience, but it was a lot of work, filming everything, doing the work, editing, and I really appreciate everyone who watched this video, so thank you very much. I also want to thank my awesome friends for coming to help me and lending me tools, and we just had a lot of fun doing this stuff as well. I'm going to drive it for the first time and I'm not going to film it, I just want to experience it for myself. But I will make a video driving this car around, showing you guys around and letting you guys experience it a little bit as well. See you guys later.
Keep an eye on the channel because the next episode will contain dyno runs, some tuning and a special announcement.